All right, welcome back to Attribution Nation podcast. In this current series, we're stepping into the C-suite to hear directly from CMOs navigating today's most complex marketing challenges, from AI disruption to the old age-old alignment battles between marketing and sales. We are unpacking the real reporting and data problems that leaders are solving, and in some cases, some of the ones that are still keeping them up at night. So join us for candid conversations that go beyond just metrics and into the strategies, experiments, and lessons that are shaping the future of marketing leadership. In today's episode, I am joined by JP Carter, the VP of Marketing for System Pavers. And in this interview, we're going to discuss measuring marketing's impact across digital and offline channels, and in particular, some traditional marketing channels that we don't talk about a lot in a lot of our episodes because JP's company here, System Pavers, is a little bit different than some of the companies that we've talked to in the past and who they market to and how they go to market. So JP's going to help us talk about measurement strategies for some different types of channels. So JP, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. Tell us a little bit about yourself and System Pavers.
All right, sounds good. Well, Drew, I appreciate it. Thanks again for having me. I'm excited about this one. So as you mentioned, I am the VP of Marketing for System Pavers. We're a leader in the outdoor living space. So we help create dreams come true for where you live and creating that perfect oasis, whether that be your patio out back or your beautiful driveway or lots of different solutions for making sure your outdoor living is gorgeous and where we set the table essentially for you to create memories. So been here for a handful of years, done a lot of fantastic things in the migration for taking a brand that you mentioned that did marketing one way and kind of flipped it on its ear and do it a completely different way now. And we're very excited about where we're going with it.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about your buyers and kind of the buying journey they go through. So how do your buyers buy? Let's start there, and then we'll get into the other pieces.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a unique buying process because we're not selling a little widget, right? We're not selling a pair of socks or something that is just an ad hoc buy. We're selling something that is significant investment into your oasis, your home. So we have a wide array of marketing channels for those prelim touch points that are both online and offline, where we try and touch consumers and prospects that we think that we have an opportunity to help. And we use those online and offline touch points as a brand introduction, but we also use them as opportunities to educate, inspire, and then ideally convert those individuals to projects. And we go hand in hand in that process with our sales team. We have a fantastic sales team that does the in-home opportunities. So we do the lead generation and the appointment generation, and then we pass the baton off to our sales team, who comes and sits at your coffee table and hears what you have, what you're looking for, whether again that be a patio, a driveway, whatever. And then we come up with the solutions that you're looking for. So it's not a fast process. It can be. Ideally, it's a fast process, but it's typically not a fast one because we want to do it the right way. And we draw it up and you see beautiful visuals, making sure that you're excited about the opportunity. And then we go to making it happen and putting rocks and dirt to making that beautiful backyard and that beautiful driveway and those beautiful projects where we help with, again, patios, decking, lighting, like turf, anything outdoor. We can help you to make sure that you are excited about your home front.
Okay, so this is obviously not an impulse product that you're selling. So, this is, big investment. It's my home, my sanctuary, my castle. How does the fact that it's a longer, more complex buying journey with more touch points change the way that you all think about measuring marketing's impact?
So it's an interesting one that is, you mentioned earlier, the opportunities or the things that keep you up at night. It's one of those ones where we can never have it perfect. So we're always looking at opportunities to make the entire journey better. So obviously we do a really good job and we're very proud of the work that we do on the acquisition front. Then on the education piece, we do a good job. Our sales team is fantastic with those relationships and the back and forth to making sure that we draw that up. However, we are always looking at opportunities for those perfectly timed touch points that we can then say, Drew, hey, we know you met with salesperson X on this date. It's been 30 days. You talked about this type of project. Here's an opportunity where we can touch you via email, text messaging, perfectly timed social ad, whatever it is, and making sure that we're putting that opportunity in front of the right person at the right time. So that way that process, because you called it, it's not an impulse buy, that we're doing it the right way in the right channels with the right message. And then measuring it is a completely different piece, right? Attribution across online and offline channels is something that we spend so much time on. It's kind of nuts. But that's how we get it right. And that's how we continue to get better and get more efficient. So it's all about timing for us.
Okay. Now you kind of just segued into this next question a little bit here. You all invest in some unique channels that are a little bit more traditional marketing, but are not the type of thing that you can measure using click-based attribution. So we're talking things like door-to-door efforts, community events, things like that. So how do you all approach understanding the value of those activities when those are a lot more difficult to track?
Absolutely. A lot of what we do is the human element. So we do a good amount of what we consider and what we call field marketing. So we do canvassing, where we do door to door, and what we do is we layer different layer different data points to make sure we're going to the right areas. We look at where we've sold jobs before. We look at the demographic data. We look at a lot of the information that's available based on percentage of homeowners, how much the houses are worth. So we know it's viable to us. So we do a lot there, but then we also do a lot, you called out the events. So we're at a lot of trade shows, home shows, things like that, where we know homeowners are looking to potentially look into opportunities for their home front. Measuring that is something that we put a lot of time and effort into, and we've got a great partner. We Sales Rabbit for how we track what happens there. So we know if a canvasser goes out and knocks on, let's make up a number, say 300 doors a day, we know, okay, if he knocks on X amount, if it's a numbers game, how many should we get for leads? How many appointments should we get? And at the end of the day, it all comes down to ROAS, right? So if we're spending the money on these channels, whether it be the events or the canvassing and the handshakes, honestly, is what we're looking for. We're looking to pay for handshakes. How many handshakes do we need to pay for to turn that into a marketing and then a sales opportunity for us? So that attribution is huge, because there's so much that could happen in those offline activities that we could be blind to if we don't do it the right way.
Yeah, so I want to use a real concrete example here for our listeners to kind of understand some of the mechanisms that you're using here. So let's say I'm your door-to-door sales guy, and I'm knocking on doors, and I walk up to somebody's door, I knock on the door, and they answer, which in this day and age is probably a win in and of itself. And they have the conversation. How are you tracking? Okay, well, I knocked on 200 doors today. I had 50 people answer the door. And of those 50 people, 10 of those I'm actually excited about to follow up with. How do you track, specifically, let's talk tactically, how are you turning those door visits into some sort of a measurable data point? Or are you not turning those into a data point and you're doing things like lift analysis? So I know, well, in this neighborhood, we had a door knocker, and in this neighborhood right next door, we didn't. Let's see what happens with the two neighborhoods. What is your approach here specifically for door to door?
Oh man. So, okay, this could be a lengthy one. So
I love it. Let's go. I love getting into the
things
nitty-gritty.
That we could do here. So all of our canvassers carry tablets with them at all times. So if I knock on your door, Drew, you answer, we shake hands, and we start talking, right? We talking about your driveway, patio, turf, whatever, right? And I'm trying to ask questions and understand if you have any interest in an outdoor living project. And you say, yeah, maybe it's something I'm thinking about. We get down the path and you're like, I'll entertain it, right? I have the tablet right then and there, so I can have some data acquisition. And we have opportunities for form fills where we then internalize that in the moment into our CRM, where I can say Drew Smith is interested in a lighting project, not necessarily interested in a consultation right now, but we can reach back out. He said, talk to me in spring. We can throw it on the calendar that there's a reminder, and we reach out, whether it's our contact center or whether it's a local sales team. We reach out come April 1st and say, hey, Drew, are you still interested in that lighting project? We can set up a sales presentation. A design consultant comes out and sits with you, and ideally we turn that into something. There's so many other elements of that, though, that we use that are very important for us. So that's the perfect situation, right? We knock, you say yes, we fill out the form, we make it happen. There's other opportunities where we use this data of, if we knock on 200 doors and we don't get any answers, or we get a bunch of renters or anything along those lines, we use that as data for our digital targeting. And whether we use remarketing efforts, whether we use that in direct mail, we take that in as our prelim touch point, as our initial touch point, and how that influences everything else that we do. So again, this one is a slippery slope, because we could talk about the strategies of how we target. We talk about leveraging AI for that. There's a million different things, but if we get somebody to open the door and shake our hand, that's going to help us learn something. Whether we win and we get a consultation, or we learn something about it and how we can target better in other channels, it's a win every time somebody opens the door.
Okay, so you are turning those. Okay, this person opened the door and we had a conversation. You are turning those into data points that you can then track back to opportunities and sales. Okay, cool. So now, let me also just, and I'm gonna flip the script on the door to door thing. So let's say we're going door to door, and I don't answer the door. You guys come to my door. I don't answer the door because, quite frankly, I never answer the door. And I'm assuming, I'm going to make a big assumption here, your door knockers have something that they can leave behind if there's no answer, correct? Cool. Now, let's say, for example, I get the lead thing you left behind, and I'm actually interested. I just never open the door because I never open the door. Do we then say, okay, cool, I pick up the phone and I call you guys. I'm like, hey, you guys left me this thing. I'm actually kind of interested in getting a quote for this idea I've got. Are you guys doing like how did you hear about us on that phone call? Oh yeah, it was from something you left behind at the door. Like, is that kind of the process that you're using to make sure that you get the tracking if we didn't have the conversation, but it still had an impact because I didn't open the door and you left the thing behind?
Absolutely. So on those, we call them door hangers. On those door hangers, there's a dedicated phone number that we know if somebody calls that number, we know where the source of that came from. So we know that came from canvassing. There's also, we have QR codes and direct links on there that have tags. So if somebody goes to those landing pages, we know where that came from. But to answer your question about how did you hear about us? We do that across everywhere that we touch. So our contact center asks that every single time. Hey, Drew, thanks for the call. We're really excited. Just curious, how did you hear about us? And that goes into every record because that helps us with our attribution as well. It is volunteered. It is directional. However, if we hear 90% of people say they heard of us from canvassing, that tells me what I need to be investing into as a marketing leader. Same can be said for what we do online. If you go to our website and you fill out a form, after you fill out the form, we ask the same question. How'd you hear about us? Whether we have it in the tagging or not, we always compare what our attribution tells us versus what a consumer directionally tells us. Because if that tells us something is off, maybe we need to look at our tagging. Maybe we need to look at our attribution. Because if we think you came in from a search ad, but you're telling me that a canvasser knocked on your door, there's a little bit of a conflict there. We need to make sure we're investing into the right channels. So yes, we are always looking into what's working, what's not, where are the biggest opportunities, and where we should either invest into or pull back from.
Okay, one quick follow-up on that, and I think I love the way that you're approaching that, but I want to just call this out for our listeners. So a lot of our listeners operate in the B2B software space, which is totally fine. But one of the things that you hear a lot of in the B2B software space is that you don't need to do attribution. If you do, as long as you're doing a how did you hear about us? And so there's a lot of conflict in the B2B software space about, well, which one do I do? Do I do attribution or do I do how did you hear about us? There's no conflict. You want to do both, because if you do both, you get both angles accounted for, right? So it's not a one or the other. Like these aren't mutually exclusive. You can and should do both. And to JP's point, JP, your point exactly, now we actually have two separate data sets. One is, what is the data set that our data is telling us? And then separately, what is the consumer themselves telling us about how they heard about us? That is really important. And sometimes you're going to have some discrepancies, and those discrepancies are okay. They just provide context. It doesn't mean your attribution's wrong. It could just mean that we added some context here. So I love the way that you're doing both the attribution and the data-driven piece, as well as the, how did you hear about us? They just getting it straight from the consumer. Now, here's a follow-up question to that. One of the things that we're finding a lot of our listeners and a lot of our clients as a business are interested in is not just the how did you hear about us or the attribution data. They're also starting to get more interested into the psychology of, well, why did you buy from us? Are you doing any kind of post-purchase questions or surveys about what made you decide to buy from us?
Yeah. So yes, we do that, but I'll tell you, where that is massively valuable because we learn about why people chose to buy from us. One of the things that we've done it for a while, but we really leaned in 2025 is surveying those that chose not to. And we learn more about the no more than we learn about the yes. The yes is fantastic, right? That's where we want to lean in is how, but we don't learn as much there because most of our consumers, the answers are the same. We know who we are as a brand. We know what we stand for. We know what we do really well, but consumer behaviors change all the time, and no's are where we need to invest in training, where we need to invest in our storytelling and our positioning. Why did you say no? Is it cost? Is it timing? It could be a million different reasons, but if we've identified trends through the no's, that changes my marketing landscape for the next 6 months, most likely.
Loss analysis. Yes.
Yep.
I say all the time that you can learn more from losses than you can from wins. Absolutely. Yep. 100%. Now, we've talked about this a little bit. You invest in both online and offline channels. So you've got your digital advertising, your retargeting, you've got your canvassing and other offline activities that you're doing. How are you deciding as a marketing leader where to allocate the budget between the digital and the offline? And particularly considering a lot of times the data that you might use to track those and make these decisions might be, not exactly like apples to apples.
So when I first joined, we were very rigid in how we approached our channel investments. And say it was a monthly or a quarterly. This is your budget per channel, per campaign. And when we hit those limits, that was it, right? Regardless of performance, whether it was up, down, positive, negative, that was what we were doing. We're sticking to our budget. Now we have an approach where we're always testing and making sure that we're looking into what's succeeding, what's working versus what's not. And we're much more fluid in real time with, okay, this weekend we saw an opportunity with this type of campaign. We're going to increase our efforts here. We're going to lean in from an investment perspective here, which means we need to pull back on something that isn't working as well. So we hyperfund the things that are working in real time. And that's why we've built the team the way we have with the structure we have. So that way we can be much more flexible versus saying, well, this is working. Let's take advantage of it in February. That doesn't really help us in December. So we want to make sure that we're trying to win the day and making sure that we're leaning into where consumers are engaging and converting the most.
Now, you mentioned that you shifted from being, really offline heavy to adding in a lot more of the digital side of advertising and marketing. What were some of the early signals or data points that kind of told you, hey, we've got to shift our thinking here?
So yeah, a while ago, and not in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't that long ago, we were very, very involved in direct mail, magazines, newspapers, all of those things where consumers used to digest a lot of their content. That shifted. I mean, it's been shifting for a long time, but that shifted where most folks that digest content do it in a digital format, whether that's via social or search or blogs or whatever. It could be a million different things. We tested our way into that. And the beauty of that transition for System Pavers was traditional efforts like direct mail and newspapers and magazines and things like that. There are a lot of upfront expense and it's sunk costs. So if we agreed to do something like that today, it's probably not consumer facing for 60 days, which doesn't really benefit us for my investment today. And if there is anything that happens in the world that could change our storytelling or our tone or position, whatever it is, offers, or a competitor does something between now and then, it is what it is, right? Like that toothpaste is out of the tube and I can't change it. Where we started changing our testing strategy into more digital because we can do that today. I can impact Drew as a prospect. I can influence what you see this afternoon, whereas not waiting until February. So we tested our way into that, into various channels, into various campaigns. And that kind of flipped our marketing mix on its ear versus a very traditional forward thinking model to really being hunters and trying to win the day, the week, the month, not necessarily worrying about what are we going to do next year. We're always thinking about what are we going to do next year, but we're not trying to push that out. We're trying to win now.
Okay. Now you've mentioned testing a couple of times. So how do you approach testing from a strategic level? Not creative tests, but from a strategic level and approaching channels that you're going to be testing. How do you approach that from a strategic level?
Yeah. So we have a fortunate structure at System Pavers where we don't have franchises per se, but we have branches. And we have the opportunity where we can test within a specific market or a specific state or a specific region, something along those lines, and test the waters a little bit. So we always do, and it's funny. My team, if anybody asks them, they get sick of some things that I say. And crawl, walk, run is something I say all the time, and we talk about that with testing every single day, almost every single meeting. It's crawl, walk, run, right? Like, how are we testing this? By dipping our toe in the water, and if it's good, right, lean in a little bit, and then if it's good, then we take it to the enterprise. That way, we don't do anything full bore because there's a lot of risk in that. We know we feel very confident if we're going to do something for the enterprise, for the entire business, it's because the data has shown us it's going to be good for us. And the ability to test that, not to your point, obviously there's the creative testing and there's the copy and all of those tests, but the channel campaigns, the partners, the bidding, like there's a million different things that we could be testing, and we do so, again, crawl, walk, run. We dip our toe in the water on everything before we expand upon it.
So you guys are essentially doing a mini incrementality test every time you guys want to launch a new channel. So you're saying, okay, we're going to look at this particular geography. We're going to test this here, and we're going to test the lift in this geography based on running this campaign, this new tactic, this new channel, whatever it is. And that if we can see enough lift to justify and warrant putting this out, expanding this to the entire organization, then we will do so. Or we might see a little bit of lift that tells us, hey, we're seeing a little bit of lift. Let's expand this a little bit to another geography and see if we can get a similar lift or greater there. And then that'll give us the confidence that, hey, we can roll this out across the entire organization. So this is something that I think that is super important, particularly for our B2B listeners, because our B2B listeners, when they're onboarding a new channel or tactic or strategy, a lot of times they don't approach it from that standpoint of, hey, let's test this in a geography, to a limited audience, but let's put some really tight constraints on it so that we can really quickly and easily determine what the lift of this new tactic or channel is before we launch it globally or nationally or whatever this organization is. That's a really, really smart way to approach it, because to your point, it's about risk and confidence. We want to reduce the risk of potentially wasting a shitload of money sometimes, and we want to give confidence to the folks that are watching where we're investing by saying, hey, look, we've tested this in a small market. We've done the due diligence. We know that this is working. Here's the evidence. Now we want to expand it out. And you just have that additional confidence now that hey, this is something that we feel really strongly is going to work based on this data.
You nailed it. Absolutely. It's funny. You nailed another one of my buzzwords. The team gets so frustrated because I talked about the crawl, walk, run, but when you called out incrementality and iterative testing are the things that it's something that we talk about all the time. And that's the only way. We're a big business, but we're not a massive business. So that means we don't have endless budgets. If we had endless budgets, maybe we'd approach it a little bit differently. But that, to me, it's the safest, smartest way for a business our size to continue to stair step into scaling growth.
Yeah, and I mean, you've mentioned a couple times crawl, walk, run. I'm a firm believer in crawl, walk, run. Like I say that all the time as well, because look, you're not going to go from crawling to run it. You're not going to go from crawling to sprinting or marathoning, because there's even stuff beyond just running, right?
Absolutely.
So it's important to take a slow, methodical, iterative approach, because otherwise, if you don't, that's where you're introducing way too much risk. You're just going to try to go dive headfirst into the deep end without learning how to swim. You're going to be in trouble potentially.
Yeah. And we're fortunate that we've got an executive leadership team that understands the nature of this. So that way, to your point, that I've worked with some folks in the past that when there is an ounce of success, they're like, all right, put it on steroids, skip walking, sprint, go run, to your point, go run that marathon. It's like, hang on, let's learn as much as we can before we burn a lot of cash and this goes sideways. So we've got a great team here, and the leadership group here at System Pavers understands that. And that's helped us really take us to the next level from an efficiency perspective.
I also just think that generally taking an iterative approach or knowing that whatever we do, we're going to be iterative about it, also just generally reduces risk, because essentially what you're saying is we're not expecting to get it right on our first try, because who does, right? Who nails it? I mean, what percentage of the time do you absolutely nail something on the first try? It's rare. I mean, sometimes we get lucky,
sure,
and stuff works, but like it's rare. So knowing that we're taking an iterative approach, it gives us a little bit of permission, especially if we're doing it through through a crawl, walk, run methodology, where we're not launching this big, huge thing across the entire organization that we're then going to iterate off of. We're going to keep it tight and controlled, and then we're going to iterate from that. It reduces that risk because it almost gives us permission and the expectation to fail. And failure is how you learn. So important to approach things from an iterative mindset to de-risk these things that we're working on.
It's funny how that mindset impacts a lot of what you do as a marketing leader or just a leader in general. Like that statement alone, I gave a speech earlier this year about failing forward and the importance of embracing it. It goes all the way through how we recruit and how we staff. Like in our interviewing process, we talk about, if you launch campaign X and it falls flat, how do you respond? How do you learn from that? And that really goes into the type of people that we bring into the team here at System Pavers on the marketing side, but everywhere in sales and HR across the board. You nailed it, right? That's life. It's very rare that you hit a home run the first time the pitch comes down. So if you do strike out, how do you bounce back? How do you learn? And I mean, I coach youth hockey. I talk to my kids all the time about that, right? Like, hey, you missed on that breakaway. How do you bounce back from that? That's life. That's especially in marketing, but in general, how do you continue to get better? How do you learn from it? Learning is the most important thing. You either win or you learn. You don't lose. If you lose, the only way you do that is you give up.
I love it. We'll have to talk about youth hockey sometime. I have a nephew that's really involved in youth hockey. So nice. So we'll even in Phoenix, yes, there's youth hockey in Phoenix.
There's a great
also
youth program
even the Coyotes
Phoenix.
Left.
Yeah.
So yeah.
We see my kids, we see the junior Coyotes at all the weekend tournaments all around the country. They've got a great program. Yep,
they do. All right, we'll have to talk offline about youth hockey sometime. Now, so let's talk about, again, I want to stay on this iteration kind of theme here. So when you're evaluating whether a channel or a tactic is working or not, and you're looking to take this iterative approach, what are the metrics that matter most to you, and which ones do you tend to be a little bit skeptical of?
So at the end of the day, for us, ROAS is what we lean back on. But obviously, ROAS, there's some dependency on the sales process for that to actually convert. So we look at what we consider to be both upstream and downstream KPIs that kind of tell us if they're successful or not. So we look at things like the conversion rate that converts into leads and then appointments. We look into the appointments that are actually ran. So that's, again, another conversion rate point. We look into those that cancel, and then we look at those that close. And that's where we kind of, I don't want to say pass the baton, but that's where the revenue piece comes through. But if all of those other ones are successful, but no revenue comes in, at the end of the day, that teeter-totter is not necessarily beneficial to System Pavers. So we look at KPIs all the way through, did the touch point work, all the way through to this account, did this actually benefit us for revenue coming in for an opportunity? So again, upstream and then downstream, and that kind of barrier is when we pass the baton to our peers across the table.
What are there any metrics that you just like couldn't care less about, that you're just like, nah, that's a waste of time for us?
I think just the old, like the vanity metrics, where we're looking at impressions and we're looking at like there's so many things that don't truly matter to us. And I think that they matter to a lot of businesses that are more commerce focused, that are looking for an online sale transaction. They don't really matter to us. So I can't think any off the top of my head, but like a lot of the vanity ones that a lot of like bigger agencies will hang their hat on, they're not really beneficial to System Pavers. They don't really impact our decision making at all.
I personally absolutely despise impressions as a metric. Like, yep. I'll explain why. Because I don't think I've explained my hatred of impressions as a metric on this podcast yet. But here's what. There's two critical assumptions that impressions makes if you're going to do any kind of impression based tracking. Number one, that an ad served is an ad seen. Well, how many ads a day are you served that you don't even notice?
Yeah.
Hundreds. Number two, an ad seen is an ad remembered. Well, how many times do you see an ad and then 5 minutes later it's gone, like you've never seen it? All the time. It happens all the time. A perfect example is this. So I was on the road and for work, and I'm in the hotel room winding down for the night, and I decided to put on some YouTube of Nate Bargatze comedy routines. I think he's hilarious. Love me some Nate Bargatze. And I'm watching just, clips of him and all this stuff. And in between the clips, an ad pops up on YouTube. Now, this ad on YouTube is in Spanish. Now, hablo un poquito español porque estoy vivo en Arizona, but my weak spot with Spanish is hearing it and understanding it.
Sure.
So I'm listening to this ad that comes up. I have no clue what this is because it's being spoken too quickly for me to keep up. I'm actually not even looking at the screen at the time. So even if there's, subtitles, I got nothing. I don't know what they advertised. But if I went back to that website within 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, whatever it was, if I just went to that website, somebody somewhere would say, look, this ad had an impact on Drew going to our site. When in reality, I didn't understand a word of what was in that ad. That is why I hate impression-based tracking, because I may not even understand the words that are spoken in that ad, but if I go to your website within your attribution window for impressions, well, that ad had an impact. No, it didn't.
That's a good example.
Absolutely not. That ad had zero impact.
Sure. That's funny.
So that's why I hate impression-based tracking.
Yep. Yeah. It's one of those ones that, like I said, it does not and it will not ever impact our decision making at all.
Solid choice. So now again, you all work with a much longer sales cycle than a traditional consumer sales cycle. Larger, more considered purchase. You've got a mix of online and offline channels. You already mentioned we don't have unlimited budgets. So somebody that's in a similar situation, long sales cycle, mix between online and offline channels, limited budgets, what is a mindset shift about attribution or measurement that you think would have the biggest difference for somebody that's got a similar situation but is struggling with their attribution and measurement?
That's a great question. I think when I think back to the challenge that I faced here at System Pavers of the transition from one approach to a very different approach, one of the things that I remind the team of fairly regularly, and that's the marketing team as well as the executive and the leadership group here, small wins matter. And the more you stack singles and doubles, the better off your chances are to be winning. And we talk about it to quite a few folks through the organization. Big game hunting is fantastic, but if you only big game hunt, you either feast or you starve. Whereas if you're consistent and we talked about the incrementality and the iterative testing, if we hit a single every single time we're up, we're going to win this game. So if we're consistent and we have good performance, we're going to thrive. So I think the mindset and the change is mainly like, don't only try and hit home runs. Don't only look for big game. Try and be consistent in your growth. Because if you continue to take steps forward, you're going to continue to do wonderful things. And I think that can be challenging for folks as they change. Change management can be difficult, but consistency matters, and celebrating small victories is a good opportunity for growth.
I love that. Firm believer in consistency. I mean, it is, I'll take consistency over perfection in attribution to measurement all day, every day. Because quite frankly, you can't be perfect if you don't have consistency.
No such thing.
Anyway.
Yep.
Plus, there's no such thing as perfection anyway.
Yep.
But yeah, huge fan of consistency. And then I love the idea of focusing on singles and doubles and not home runs. Yeah, home runs are great, but that those singles and those doubles is what builds momentum, and momentum is undeniable. Momentum is a force of nature in the business world, and you gain momentum through singles and doubles, not through swinging big and hitting home runs.
That's right.
Absolutely. Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Awesome. Well, JP, those are all the topics that we had to cover today. I think we actually got through it a lot faster than I expected. So is there any final parting words that you would give to any marketers that might be listening to this before we jump into some of our key takeaways here?
Yeah, I think the one thing that is kind of this year has been different for me is, and we haven't really touched on it or talked about it very much, is open ears and eyes, because I think the technology landscape in the world is changing from a performance marketing world. And as AI gets more influential, those that have very rigid marketing mixes, I think they're going to be left behind. So humility, right? You don't know everything. I don't know everything. Nobody knows everything. And as the world changes and as consumer behaviors change, be open to change, be open to testing, be open to different. And I think those are the folks that are really going to win in this space in the coming months and years.
I love it. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, there's only one thing that's a constant in the marketing world, and that's change. So you've got to be open to it and embrace it. Absolutely. Well, with that, I am going to go ahead and jump into our key takeaways that I've heard throughout this interview. So first off, and I think you guys do a great job of this from the conversation here, is asking customers both how they heard about you as well as the data and attribution side of things. Don't just do one or the other, do both. And then also compare them, put them side by side and see what the two stories are being told, see where they're similar and see where there's differences. Differences doesn't mean something's wrong. Differences mean that we just might have added a lot of context to something. Also, you can learn more from losses. Consumer behaviors change constantly. And so knowing why somebody chose not to work with us is extremely valuable and might even be more valuable than why somebody did buy from us. So make sure that you are tracking your losses, make sure that you're doing loss analysis and learning from your losses. Losses can inform both marketing and sales, because if you're losing, and I'm just using this as an example, if you're losing because of budget, well, okay, obviously sales knows that, okay, we got a budget problem, so we might need to rework the way that we do scopes and quotes and things like that. But at the same time, marketing can then focus marketing on things that are designed to overcome the budget objection, right? Particularly in your world, you might be doing more emotional-based marketing versus, cost-based marketing if you know that you're losing the budget all the time. Or you might do things like, hey, the way that we build things is designed to last longer. So while you pave more, you get better, longer lasting environment, right? You just get a better product. So there's a lot of things that you can learn from losses that apply to both marketing and sales. Onboarding new strategies and tactics does not need to be scary. It doesn't. You can do it by doing testing and using an iterative process. Test things in small, limited geographies before you expand out to the entire organization. See what the lift is in those geographies and compare it against the geographies that aren't getting that new channel or tactic. And that way, okay, when we decide to make this a full-fledged channel or tactic that we're going to be doing, we now have the confidence because we've done the testing. We know what type of lift this is going to provide across the board. I loved your comment because, again, I believe this wholeheartedly, that you either win or you learn, that you don't lose. So even though you might have failed, if you learn from that, it's really not a failure. It's a learning opportunity. So as long as you learn from your failures, you never lose. You either win or you learn. And then the last one here, which was your last point here, is nobody knows everything. Be open to change. And those that are embracing the change are the folks that are going to be the most successful in 2026 and beyond, especially in this ever-changing world of AI, where every week a new AI is coming out or is getting optimized with a new version. So we've just got to be flexible and open to change so that we can position ourselves for the future of marketing.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, JP, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show here. Thank you so much for joining and sharing your thoughts and your strategies in an industry that's different from a lot of the folks that we've talked to so far in the podcast. I think that there's some good learnings here, but also still a lot of similarities, between what your types of orgs are doing and what B2B software orgs should be doing. So really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Drew, thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate it.